The abandoned pregnant mare lay bleeding in the forest, her desperate eyes meeting Sophia's with a silent plea that changed both their lives forever. "I promise to take care of you," Sophia whispered, unaware her compassion would soon make her the enemy of a ruthless millionaire who discarded the horse but wouldn't let anyone else have her. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Don Esteban Valverde's estate was a monument to wealth and power. Sprawling marble stables, pastures manicured like green carpets, and a team of employees dedicated solely to the care of his prized horses formed the cornerstone of his equestrian empire. Among all his horses, one stood out above the rest: Aurora, a chestnut mare with a coat that gleamed like burnished copper in the sunlight. Her elegant gait and proud carriage made her seem almost regal, a fitting companion for a man of Esteban's status. Aurora wasn't just any horse, she was Esteban's pride and joy. In the competitive world of equestrian sports, she had brought him countless trophies that now adorned his office. Each victory reinforced his reputation among the elite circles he frequented. The golden cups and ribbons were testaments to Aurora's speed, grace, and the considerable investment he had made in acquiring and training her. But destiny had other plans for Aurora. During an important competition, as she rounded the final turn with her characteristic power and precision, disaster struck. Her front left hoof slipped on the damp ground, and her magnificent body, nearly half a ton of muscle and grace, collapsed in a cloud of dust. The spectators fell silent, and the enthusiastic commentary abruptly ceased. Aurora struggled to rise, but a sharp pain made her falter. Assistants rushed to her side while Esteban cursed from his VIP seat. Hours later, in the veterinary clinic, the diagnosis changed everything. Aurora had suffered a severe tendon injury. With rest and therapy, she could recover enough to lead a normal life, but she would never compete again. The news hit Esteban like a physical blow. "How much will the rehabilitation cost?" he asked coldly. "A few months of intensive therapy with specialized equipment and constant care. It won't be cheap, but it's possible," explained the veterinarian. Esteban pressed his lips together. He wasn't a man accustomed to spending money on something that wouldn't generate profits. To him, a horse incapable of racing was like a car without an engine, useless. That same night, while the ranch employees retired to rest, Esteban made his decision. He called two of his most loyal workers, men who knew how to follow orders without asking questions. "I want you to take Aurora far away from here. I don't care where, but I don't want her on my property," he ordered firmly. The men exchanged uncomfortable glances but didn't dare to question him. They knew that working for Don Esteban meant obeying without protest. So, after midnight, they drove the truck to the main stable where Aurora was resting. Although exhausted from the pain, the mare raised her head at the sound of the doors opening. There was something in her eyes that conveyed a mixture of confusion and sadness, as if she sensed what was coming. The men, unable to look her directly in the eye, led her carefully to the truck. One of them gently stroked her neck before loading her. "Forgive me, friend," he murmured. The journey was long and silent. The truck traveled lonely roads, moving away from the estate and into increasingly inhospitable terrain. Finally, near a stream in the middle of a desolate landscape, they stopped. They unloaded Aurora carefully, but without saying another word. When they started the engine to leave, Aurora tried to follow them, visibly limping, but the effort was futile. The men disappeared into the darkness, leaving the mare alone under a sky covered with clouds. At dawn, the landscape surrounding her was as unfamiliar as it was inhospitable. Aurora dragged herself with effort to the stream to drink water. Her reflection in the surface showed the image of a horse that was no longer the champion everyone admired. The injured leg hurt with each step, but instinct pushed her to keep moving. There was no food, no shelter, and the only thing accompanying her was the echo of the river. Thus, the majestic purebred horse that had been a millionaire's pride was reduced to a vulnerable being, abandoned to its fate in a world that seemed to have forgotten her. And beyond the physical pain, there was something more profound in Aurora's eyes, a quiet despair, a confusion that seemed to ask why her years of loyalty and effort had ended this way. Unknown to Esteban and his men, Aurora carried a secret within her: new life. She was in the early stages of pregnancy, a fact that would have made her even more valuable to most horse breeders. But Esteban, in his cold calculation of profit and loss, had overlooked this detail, seeing only a damaged investment rather than the potential for new beginnings. The sun had barely begun to tint the hills with gold when Sophia, a 19-year-old girl, left her small adobe house located on the edge of a valley. Her home was humble, with worn walls and tile roofs that barely resisted the rains, but it was full of warmth. Despite the difficulties, Sophia always maintained a smile on her face. She had grown up surrounded by animals, and from a young age her father had taught her that every living being deserved respect and care. Although her father was no longer there, she continued practicing those values every day. That morning, Sophia decided to go to the nearby stream to collect water. Her donkey, Bruno, accompanied her with patience, carrying 2 empty jugs on his sides. Sophia, with her brown hair gathered in a braid and her somewhat worn blue dress, walked barefoot on the dirt path. At her side ran Luna, a mixed-breed dog with large ears and a curious gaze. As she advanced, something caught her attention. In the distance, by the trees that bordered the stream, she spotted a dark figure moving with difficulty. At first, she thought it might be an injured deer, but as she approached, she realized it was a horse. A horse? "What is it doing here alone?" Sophia murmured, stopping a few meters away. The animal was large, with an intense chestnut coat that stood out even under the dim morning light. Its mane was tangled, and its body covered with dust and small wounds. Although its bearing was imposing, it was noticeably exhausted. The mare's front left leg was swollen, and she was visibly limping as she tried to drink water from the stream. Sophia felt a knot in her stomach. She had seen injured horses before, but never one so majestic and in such a deplorable state. She took a step toward her, but the mare suddenly raised her head and backed away with a weak neigh, as if fearing she would be hurt. "Easy, easy," Sophia said softly, raising her hands to show she had no bad intentions. "I'm not going to hurt you." Luna, the dog, went ahead and barked a couple of times, but Sophia stopped her. "Luna, don't scare her," she ordered in a whisper. Sophia stood still, carefully observing the mare. There was something in her gaze that deeply moved her, not just physical pain, but a kind of sadness that seemed to come from her soul. She decided she couldn't leave her there. "Someone must have abandoned you. But that doesn't mean this is where your story ends," she told her, as if the animal could understand her. With slow movements, Sophia took a piece of bread she had brought for breakfast from her bag. She extended it toward the mare, keeping her distance so as not to frighten her. The animal sniffed the air, hesitating, but hunger finally overcame her. She took a couple of shaky steps toward Sophia and carefully took the bread. "That's it, girl. You're safe now," Sophia said with a gentle smile. Once she had gained Aurora's trust enough to approach, Sophia examined the injured leg. Though she wasn't a veterinarian, she knew enough to notice that the inflammation was serious and that the mare needed urgent care. She looked toward the stream and then at Bruno, who was waiting patiently with the empty jugs. "It's going to be difficult, but I can't leave you here," she said with determination. Sophia improvised a kind of halter with the rope she carried for Bruno, and with great patience, guided Aurora away from the stream. The mare limped with each step, but seemed to trust Sophia enough to follow her. The journey back to the ranch was slow. Bruno walked in front with the jugs while Luna trotted alongside, watching the injured horse. During the entire journey, Sophia talked in a low voice, trying to reassure the animal. "I'll call you Aurora," she said suddenly, remembering her father's stories about horses as swift as the wind. "It's a good name, don't you think?" When they reached the small ranch, Sophia led Aurora to the improvised stable where she normally kept Bruno. Although the space was small, it was clean and had enough straw for the horse to rest. Bruno, generous as always, gave up his place without complaint, while Sophia brought fresh water and a blanket to cover Aurora. The girl spent hours tending to the swollen leg with warm water and herbs she had learned to use from her grandmother. She cleaned the wound with delicacy. The mare whinnied softly at the contact, but didn't resist. She seemed to understand that Sophia only wanted to help her. "I don't know where you come from, but here, no one will abandon you," she said while stroking her neck. That night, as the moon illuminated the valley, Aurora finally lay down on the straw, exhausted but with some peace. Sophia, sitting next to her, felt a mixture of sadness and hope. She knew that caring for a horse in those conditions wouldn't be easy, especially with her limited resources, but she couldn't turn her back. "I promise I'll do everything possible for you," she whispered before turning off the oil lamp. As the wind whispered through the trees, Aurora closed her eyes, feeling for the first time in days that she wasn't alone. Days passed slowly on the small ranch, and each one meant a challenge for both Sophia and Aurora. The horse that had arrived weak and fearful was beginning to adapt to Sophia's constant care. Her leg was still swollen, and each step she took seemed a reminder of the accident that had changed her destiny. But the calm environment and Sophia's affection were beginning to restore something she had lost: hope. Every morning, Sophia woke up before dawn to attend to Aurora. The routine was demanding: cleaning the wound, applying poultices with herbs collected from the nearby hills, and making sure she ate enough to regain strength. Resources were scarce, but she always found a way to take care of her animals. "Come on, Aurora. Today is a good day to try walking a bit more," she would say as she held the rope she had converted into an improvised halter. At first, attempts to make the horse move beyond the stable were frustrating. Aurora, although willing, would stop after a few meters, visibly limping. But Sophia didn't give up. Patient, she would speak to her tenderly, caress her, and encourage her to take one more step. "You know, my father used to say that horses are like us. They need someone to believe in them so they can overcome fear," she would tell her as she guided her toward the nearby stream. "And I believe in you, Aurora." With time, those short walks began to bear fruit. The inflammation in her leg decreased little by little, and Aurora regained some strength. Although she still limped, there was a different shine in her eyes, a spark that reflected the impact of Sophia's care and affection. One afternoon, while collecting firewood to heat water, Sophia stopped to observe Aurora from a distance. She was with Luna and Bruno, who seemed to accept her as part of their small family. The girl couldn't help but smile. Although she knew the road to recovery was long, Aurora's progress was proof that the effort was worth it. However, caring for Aurora wasn't easy. The costs of food and medicine were beginning to weigh on Sophia's pocket. Her only source of income was selling eggs and milk at the village market, and with winter approaching, she knew sales would decrease. "I'm going to need help to get through this, but I won't give up on you," she told the horse one night while brushing her with an old wooden comb. Aurora, as if understanding Sophia's words, moved her ears toward her and looked at her with those deep eyes that so moved her. Sophia let out a little laugh. "Are you telling me you trust me? All right, but I also need you to do your part." The weeks continued, and the bond between them strengthened each day. Sophia talked to Aurora as if she were a close friend, telling her her dreams and concerns. "You know, I've always wanted to have my own animal refuge, a place where no horse, dog, or donkey is rejected. That would be nice, wouldn't it?" she would say while caressing her beneath her mane. Aurora would whinny softly, as if responding. One day, during one of their walks to the stream, Sophia encountered Doña Clara, an older woman from the village who used to stop at the ranch to buy fresh milk. Upon seeing Aurora, Clara was impressed by her bearing, even in her state of recovery. "What a beautiful horse you have, Sophia. Where did you get her?" Clara asked, approaching cautiously. "I found her abandoned near the stream. She was injured, but little by little she's improving," responded Sophia with a mixture of pride and modesty. Clara observed the horse with attention. "This is no ordinary horse. This animal is of fine blood, I'm sure. Look at her body, her muscles, even now that she's thinner. Haven't you thought that she might have belonged to someone important?" The question left Sophia thoughtful. She had never considered that Aurora might have been more than just an abandoned horse. Her majestic bearing had always seemed special to her, but she had never imagined that she might have had a different past than any other injured animal she had rescued. Whoever her former owner was, they left her behind as if she was worth nothing, she said firmly. Now she's here, and that's all that matters. Clara nodded, but couldn't help feeling curious. "If you need help with her, let me know. My nephew works in the capital at a place where they take care of horses like this. Maybe he can give you some advice." Sophia thanked her for the offer, although inwardly she felt that Aurora no longer needed anything more than her care and affection. For her, the horse wasn't just an animal. She was a reflection of her own struggle to get ahead despite difficulties. That night, as the wind whispered among the trees and the stars shone in the sky, Sophia sat next to Aurora, resting her head on her side. "I don't know what your life was like before coming here, but I promise you'll never be alone again," she said quietly. The horse, as if understanding, gently inclined her head toward her, closing her eyes with a tranquility she hadn't felt in a long time. In one of the luxurious properties of the magnate Esteban Valverde, a man accustomed to getting what he wanted regardless of the cost, chaos reigned. Esteban, 47, owned a successful chain of real estate and agricultural companies, and his fortune had made him an influential figure in the region's most exclusive circles. However, behind his elegant facade hid a ruthless man who valued everything solely based on its utility and benefit. That afternoon, while reviewing contracts in his spacious office with walls decorated in wood and equestrian trophies, Esteban was interrupted by his foreman, Hernan, a robust man with a serious expression who seemed uncomfortable when entering. "Mr. Valverde, we have a problem. We've discovered something about Aurora." Esteban dropped his stylographic pen forcefully on the table and looked up, frowning. "Aurora? That useless mare I got rid of? What about her?" Hernan shifted uncomfortably. "Sir," the veterinarian called. "He was reviewing her medical records after the accident and discovered something we missed. Aurora is pregnant." The words hung in the air for a moment as Esteban processed the information. His expression shifted from annoyance to calculation. "Pregnant? With Emperador's foal?" Esteban's voice carried a new edge to it. "Yes, sir. The breeding we arranged just before the competition took. That foal would be worth—" "I know exactly what that foal is worth," Esteban cut him off, rising from his chair with his face flushed with anger. "Aurora isn't just any horse, Hernan. That foal represents a fortune. Find her now." Hernan tried to explain the situation. "Sir, we've been looking in all the surroundings of the estate. The last we know is that after the injury, she was taken away as you ordered." Esteban approached him with a threatening tone. "Listen to me, Hernan. That horse carries my name and my brand. I won't allow it to end up in the hands of just anyone. Do whatever is necessary to recover her, and if you can't, don't bother coming back." Meanwhile, at Sophia's ranch, The days passed calmly. The young woman continued caring for Aurora with dedication. Although she still limped slightly, the horse showed signs of recovery each day. Her body, previously covered with wounds, now looked stronger and healthier thanks to Sophia's feeding and care. One afternoon, as she returned from walking with Aurora through the valley, Tomas, a neighbor passing by with his pack of donkeys, stopped upon seeing the imposing chestnut horse. "My goodness, Sophia, where did you get that animal?" he asked with admiration, lowering his hat to get a better look. "I found her abandoned near the stream. She was in very bad shape, but little by little she's getting better," she responded with a mixture of pride and humility. Tomas crossed his arms, observing Aurora carefully. "This isn't just any horse, Sophia. She has the bearing of fine blood. She might be from some important estate. I wouldn't be surprised if someone is looking for her." Sophia felt a chill upon hearing that, but she remained firm. If someone wanted her, they wouldn't have left her in those conditions. For me, Aurora no longer belongs to anyone else. She's part of my family. Tomas nodded with an understanding smile, but before leaving he gave her a warning. "Just be careful. The owners of horses like this aren't always nice people." That night, while feeding Aurora and stroking her under her mane, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about Tomas's words. The possibility of someone coming to claim her filled her with unease. "I promised I wouldn't leave you alone, Aurora," she whispered with determination, "and I'll fulfill that no matter what happens." But in the nearby village, Hernan and two of Esteban's assistants had already begun asking questions with a photograph of Aurora in hand. They roamed the streets looking for information. It didn't take long for them to find someone who had seen a humble young woman walking with a majestic chestnut horse around the valley. "They say she lives in a small ranch near the stream to the south," informed one of the assistants. Hernan nodded with a mixture of relief and tension. He knew that facing Esteban Valverde with the news wouldn't be easy, especially because the businessman never accepted that something he considered his was in others' hands. "Prepare the horses. Tomorrow morning we'll go to that place," ordered Hernan. That night, as the moon illuminated the ranch, Sophia stroked Aurora without imagining that the horse's past was getting closer to catching up with them. The following morning, Sophia woke up feeling unusually tired. She had stayed up late attending to Aurora, who seemed restless. There was something different about the mare that Sophia couldn't quite identify. A change in her posture, a new fullness to her sides. As she went about her morning chores, Sophia made a discovery that both delighted and concerned her. Aurora's belly was slightly swollen, and there was a new tenderness to the mare's demeanor. "Could it be?" Sophia whispered, laying a gentle hand on Aurora's side. She wasn't an expert, but she had helped birth enough farm animals to recognize the signs. "You're pregnant, aren't you, girl?" Aurora nickered softly, as if confirming Sophia's suspicion. The young woman felt her heart race. On one hand, this was wonderful news. New life, a foal that would bring joy to their small family. On the other hand, it meant Aurora needed even better care, more food, and possibly veterinary attention that Sophia could scarcely afford. "No wonder someone might be looking for you," Sophia murmured, thinking of Tomas's warning with renewed concern. A pregnant mare of Aurora's quality would indeed be valuable to wealthy horse breeders. Sophia spent the morning reorganizing the stable, making it more comfortable for Aurora's condition. She added extra straw for bedding and made plans to visit the village to learn more about caring for pregnant horses. As limited as her resources were, she was determined to give Aurora everything she needed. By midday, Sophia was sitting beside Aurora in the stable, brushing her coat and talking softly about the future. "Your baby will be beautiful just like you," she said, smiling as she worked. "And don't worry, I'll take care of both of you. No one will separate us." She was so absorbed in her conversation with Aurora that she didn't notice the cloud of dust rising in the distance as 3 riders approached her small ranch. Hernan and Esteban's men had found them at last. Luna's sudden barking alerted Sofia. She rose quickly, peering out of the stable door, and felt her stomach drop at the sight of 3 well-dressed men on expensive horses coming up the path to her home. There was something about their purposeful approach that told her immediately why they had come. "Stay here, Aurora," she whispered, patting the mare's neck reassuringly. "Everything will be all right." But as she stepped out to meet the visitors, Sofia knew that the peaceful days she had spent healing Aurora might be coming to an end. The battle for the mare's future was about to begin, and she would need all her courage to face what was coming. The sun had barely begun to peek over the horizon when Hernan and his men arrived at Sofia's small ranch. The fresh morning air and the tranquil landscape contrasted with the tension that hung in the atmosphere. After several hours of travel, they had found the place thanks to the villagers' directions. Although Sofia's ranch was far from the city, its strategic location near the stream and surrounded by mountains made it an ideal place for raising animals. Though limited in resources, the modest but welcoming country house was surrounded by trees that gave shade to the horses and animals in general, the perfect corner for Aurora to recover from her accident. The sound of hooves echoed in the distance, and Sofia, who was in the stable tending to Aurora, looked up upon hearing the horse's steps approaching. Her first instinct was to remain calm, but something inside told her this day wouldn't be like any other. When she stepped outside, she saw 3 men mounted on well-fed horses, completely different from hers. At their head was Hernan, Esteban Valverde's foreman, a man Sofia had heard mentioned many times in the village but had never had the opportunity to meet. Hernan dismounted quickly and approached Sofia with a serious expression. His cold, calculating gaze examined her from head to toe, as if evaluating whether she was worthy of his time. At his side, the 2 men accompanying him remained silent, observing the scene with apparent disinterest, but not taking their eyes off Sofia. "Good morning, miss," Hernan began, his voice deep and authoritative. "We're looking for a chestnut horse of fine breed. Have you seen it around here?" Sofia, who didn't know the men or their intentions, tried to stay calm, although a knot began to form in her stomach. "A chestnut horse? Yes, it's possible. I found one injured near the stream a few days ago. I've been taking care of it, but I don't know anything about fine breeds. I just know it was in bad shape when I found it." Hernan observed her for a moment as if trying to read her mind, then let out a sigh of frustration and said firmly, "That horse belongs to my boss, Esteban Valverde. It was on one of his properties but disappeared after suffering an accident." "Where is it?" The name Esteban Valverde made Sofia tremble slightly, though she didn't show it. She knew enough about Esteban to understand he wasn't a man of noble principles. In the village, rumors circulated about how he treated his employees and animals, and she never thought someone so cruel could be the owner of an animal as majestic as Aurora. However, she knew she couldn't surrender easily. "If it's his, why did he abandon it in the forest, injured and without care?" Sofia responded, keeping her gaze fixed on Hernan's eyes. "No one who truly loves an animal would leave it in that state. I don't know why he did it, but it doesn't seem fair that they now claim it as if it were simple property." Hernan frowned, visibly annoyed by the young woman's firmness. "That's none of your business. My boss is the owner of that horse, and that means it's under his right. If you found it, you should return it. It's that simple." Sofia felt her heart beating faster, but she wasn't going to yield. She had cared for Aurora with dedication and affection and wasn't going to let them drag her back to a life of neglect. "I'm sorry, but the horse isn't leaving here. I found it, I healed it, and now it's part of this place. I'm not handing it over to anyone." Hernan, seeing that the young woman wasn't going to yield, took a step closer, his face hardened by frustration. "Don't make this more difficult for me, Sophia. My boss has many resources and knows how to get what he wants. I don't want us to have to resort to more drastic methods." Hernan's words weren't empty. Sophia could see in his gaze that this man was accustomed to handling situations of force. But she wasn't going to be intimidated. Her response was calm but firm. "I'm not going to move from here. If Esteban Valverde really wants Aurora, he'll have to come face me himself." The air became charged with tension. It was then that Aurora made her appearance. The horse, which had been resting near the shed, slowly approached Sophia, as if defending her territory. Although she still limped slightly, her imposing bearing and majestic presence didn't go unnoticed. With her eyes fixed on the men, she approached cautiously but decisively. "This horse has more heart than you think," murmured Sophia, gently stroking her neck. "And I won't let you take her." Hernan, seeing the horse's reaction, paused for a moment, surprised by the connection between Sophia and the animal. However, he quickly regained his composure and took a step back. "We'll see about this another way. Esteban won't forgive this. This horse belongs to him and he'll recover it, whatever it takes." Sophia looked at him steadily, refusing to be intimidated. Then let him come claim it himself. The men, without saying another word, mounted their horses and began to move away, leaving behind a heavy air of threat. Sophia watched them disappear down the path, but she didn't relax until they were completely out of her sight. With a sigh of relief, Sophia turned to Aurora, who was now at her side. She caressed her gently without taking her eyes off her. "None of this is easy, is it? But don't worry, I won't let you go," she said softly. The horse, as if understanding her words, offered a gentle neigh and brought her head closer to her. Sophia smiled, feeling a deep connection with the animal. She knew that what had begun as a simple task of healing an injured horse had now become a fight for her freedom. The air had begun to calm after Hernan and his men's visit, but Sophia couldn't help feeling restless. The memories of his words and the latent threat from Esteban Valverde accompanied her for the rest of the day. As she walked alongside Aurora, who now seemed much more relaxed, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about what would come next. She knew that confrontation hadn't ended. It had only been postponed. In her small ranch, Sophia continued her routine, but a constant concern had settled in her heart. She knew Esteban Valverde wouldn't easily be deterred. His money and power made him unstoppable, and if one thing she had learned from her humble life, it was that people like him were never content with less than what they wanted. Aurora's future was at stake, and she couldn't allow it to be snatched away. As night fell, Sophia sat on the porch steps, gazing out at the darkening valley. Aurora grazed nearby, the curve of her pregnant belly just visible in the fading light. "We've got to be ready," Sophia whispered, more to herself than to the mare. "They'll be back, and next time it won't be just the foreman." She watched as Luna circled protectively near Aurora, the small dog somehow sensing the mare's importance to her mistress. Bruno, too, seemed to stand guard, his usual placid demeanor replaced with an alertness that matched Sophia's own unease. Sophia knew that the coming days would test her resolve like never before. But looking at Aurora, at the new life growing within her, Sophia felt a determination that burned away her fear. She would not let Esteban Valverde or anyone else take away what she had come to love. Meanwhile, in Esteban Valverde's mansion, the atmosphere was completely different. The opulence of his home, with marble columns and ornamental statues, reflected his ego and power. In his office, a crystal lamp illuminated the plans and documents scattered across the table. Esteban, a 47-year-old man with an imposing bearing, was seated behind his desk, looking at a photo of Aurora. "It's absurd," murmured Esteban, passing his hand over his face. "How could I have let this happen?" Hernan had returned hours earlier with bad news. The search had been unsuccessful, and the young woman who had found the horse didn't seem willing to hand it over. Esteban's frustration increased as he thought about the time and money he had invested in that animal. Aurora had been one of the most promising horses in his stable, a fine breed that represented his status among other millionaires and ranchers. He couldn't afford to lose her, not now that he knew she was carrying Emperador's foal. "What do you want me to do, Hernan?" Esteban asked, looking fixedly at his foreman. "Should we simply go there and take her by force?" Hernan, a man who had been in Esteban's service for years, knew that this type of action wasn't his style. Despite his fearsome character, Esteban had always preferred more subtle strategies. "I think we should be more persuasive, sir. The girl is stubborn, but she can't ignore the law for long. And if she does, there are ways to make her understand." Esteban nodded thoughtfully. "I need this resolved quickly. I can't waste more time on this matter. If that girl doesn't listen to reason, I'll make her understand the hard way." At that moment, an assistant entered the office, interrupting the conversation. "Sir, there's someone at the door who wants to speak with you. He says he's the lawyer for the young woman." Esteban frowned. "A lawyer for a girl who lives in a lost ranch? What right does he think he has to come talk to me?" However, an idea crossed Esteban's mind. Perhaps this was an opportunity to resolve the situation in a way that would ensure there would be no more complications. He decided to hear what the lawyer had to say. Minutes later, a well-dressed man with a perfectly adjusted tie and a confident attitude entered the room. "Mr. Valverde, I present myself as the lawyer for Sofia Martinez, the young woman who is currently taking care of your horse, Aurora." Esteban observed the lawyer with disdain, but gestured for him to speak. "What does this girl want now?" "My client, Mr. Valverde, offers you a proposal," began the lawyer with a calm and professional voice. "She is willing to reach an agreement, but she needs guarantees that Aurora will be treated with respect and won't be forced to work in inhumane conditions as occurred on your property." Esteban arched an eyebrow. "She doesn't seek money or compensation. She only wants the horse to be in good hands." Esteban remained silent for a moment, observing the lawyer and considering his words. Meanwhile, he thought about what losing Aurora truly meant. She wasn't just an expensive horse, she was an extension of his image and power. If the young woman didn't yield, it could become more complicated than it was worth. "Fine, I'll talk to her," Esteban finally said, his tone still authoritative, "but let her know that I won't let her have the last word." Back at Sofia's ranch, the young woman had already begun to doubt if her stance would be enough to face the pressure from Esteban Valverde. Her tranquil and simple life had completely changed in the last few weeks. Concern for Aurora occupied every one of her thoughts. However, when she saw Tomas return from the village, an old friend who had accompanied her in her first years, a new idea formed in her mind. "Do you think they can really take her from me?" Sofia asked, her voice trembling. Tomas, who knew her well, looked at her with understanding. "Sofia, you've done a lot for that horse. Don't let anyone make you feel less. If Esteban Valverde comes here, I'll be with you." Sofia smiled, grateful for his support, but she knew the battle wouldn't be easy. If she wanted to save Aurora, she would have to be willing to fight until the end. The tension between Sofia and Esteban Valverde was beginning to increase. Both were willing to do whatever necessary to get what they wanted. Sofia was willing to fight for what she considered just, while Esteban saw in the young woman a threat to his authority. Soon, the situation would reach its culmination. The next morning dawned gray and cloudy, as if presaging the storm that was approaching. At Sofia's ranch, the atmosphere was charged with tension. Although little time had passed since Hernan's visit, Sofia felt that the confrontation with Esteban Valverde was inevitable. The threat from his men still circled her mind, and the fact that he was willing to go so far for a horse like Aurora made her think things would get much more difficult. Tomas had been with her all day, helping with the ranch tasks, but he couldn't hide the concern in his face. "Sofia, this guy isn't just anyone. He's not going to be content with you telling him you won't hand her over. This matter could get very ugly." Sofia nodded, though her mind was firm. "I know, Tomas, but I'm not going to yield. Aurora has been a part of this place since I found her injured, and I'm not going to let them take her. Throughout my life, I've learned not to give up, and I won't do it now." At that moment, the sound of hooves interrupted the conversation. Sofia looked up and saw that a group of horses was rapidly approaching. Esteban Valverde was on his way, accompanied by Hernan and several more men. He wasn't alone. His presence was imposing, his face reflecting determination and arrogance. The air became even heavier, as if the storm that was forming was more than meteorological. It was the prelude to a confrontation that would change the destiny of all involved. When he dismounted from his horse, his eyes fixed on Sofia. His cold, calculating gaze showed not a hint of sympathy. "So here you are," he said with a grave voice. "Do you really think you can confront me? I am Esteban Valverde, and what I want, I get." Sofia remained firm, although her pulse increased at the proximity of the man who had threatened her peace. "You're wrong, Esteban. I'm not a woman who yields to threats, and less so when it comes to doing what's right. Aurora is here because I cared for her, and I won't let you drag her back to that hell from where you took her." Esteban frowned, but he didn't let his anger overflow. Instead, his tone became softer but equally dangerous. "You're playing with fire, Sofia. If you want to keep that horse, what do you think you'll do? Fight against all my power, against all that I represent? The poor don't win battles against the rich. They never have." Sofia, without hesitating, took a step forward. "Perhaps I don't have your money or your properties, Esteban, but I have something much more valuable. Respect for what is just. And this horse deserves something better than what you offered her." Esteban's men watched the scene in silence, clearly surprised by Sofia's courage. Hernan, who was at his side, looked at his boss nervously, aware that Sofia wasn't a woman easily intimidated. However, Esteban didn't seem willing to back down. "Do you think I care what you think?" Esteban said with a cold smile. "Nothing you have here is enough to confront me. If you really believe this is your territory, I'm mistaken, or perhaps you don't understand the magnitude of what you're provoking." Sofia, despite the pressure, didn't back down. "I know what I'm provoking. I'm defending what's mine, Esteban. And if you need to use force to take her away, then I'll be ready to defend myself. Aurora isn't just a horse to me, she's a being that deserves freedom. And if you don't see that, that's what makes you truly small." The silence that followed was heavy. Esteban's men looked at their leader, waiting for a signal to act. But Esteban Valverde wasn't accustomed to being challenged so directly. For a moment, it seemed he was weighing his options. However, the internal anger grew. He wasn't used to losing, and much less to being defied by a young woman without the resources to confront him. "Well," Esteban finally said, his tone of voice now lower but full of threat, "if what you want is a fight, you'll have it. But don't be mistaken. I always win." Sofia, with her gaze fixed on him, responded with a firmness that made Esteban's men pause for a moment. "I don't seek a fight, Esteban. I just want you to understand something. The truth will always prevail, no matter how large your fortune or how strong your power. Heart and justice can't be bought." Esteban smiled, but this time his smile didn't have its usual confidence. "We'll see, Sofia. We'll see." At that instant, Esteban's men drew closer, some with a menacing air in their steps while others awaited orders. Sofia couldn't let Esteban's words go unpunished. She knew this would be a crucial moment for her, for Aurora, and for her life. But something inside told her she wasn't alone in that fight. Although the road would be long and difficult, and although Esteban Valverde had all the power and resources on his side, Sofia was willing to fight until the end, not just for Aurora, but for what she represented, dignity and respect for the lives of animals. The sun began to hide behind the clouds as the confrontation between Sofia and Esteban Valverde reached its culminating point. Sofia's ranch, usually tranquil and peaceful, now felt like the stage for an imminent war. Around her, Esteban's men remained alert, observing every movement, waiting for their boss to give the order to act. But Sofia didn't seem disturbed. She knew she was fighting for something much greater than her own well-being. Esteban, with a look that reflected the disdain and arrogance that characterized him, stepped forward. "I'm not going to keep wasting my time, Sofia. This is your last opportunity. Do the right thing and hand over the horse without more resistance. If you don't, you'll regret it." Sofia, without taking her eyes off him, took a deep breath. "I'm not going to give you Aurora. I've made a decision, and I'm not going to back down. You're used to getting everything you want with money and power, but you can't buy what you don't understand." Esteban observed her in silence, almost amused by the young woman's tenacity. The fact that someone like her was willing to defy him enraged him, but also awakened something inside him that had long been dormant, a challenge that might not be so easy to overcome. For a moment he seemed to doubt, but he quickly recovered his posture. "If you think you're going to win, you're completely mistaken. The law is on my side, and I have all the resources to take what belongs to me," he said, his tone hardened by anger. Sofia raised her head firmly. "Not everything in life is resolved with the law, Esteban. There's something much more important than that. Respect for living beings, for those who don't have a voice. And Aurora has her place here, with me." Esteban took a step back, seeing that the young woman wasn't intimidated. He turned toward Hernan, his right-hand man, and gave him a subtle signal. Hernan, always willing to do what his boss ordered, took out a pair of written orders from his jacket and extended them before Sofia. "This is what's convenient for you to do, Sofia," said Hernan with a serious look. "If you sign these papers, Aurora will be yours forever. Esteban guarantees there won't be reprisals. You just have to sign." Sofia looked at the papers offered to her but wasn't impressed. She knew Esteban Valverde's contracts were rarely what they seemed to be. Something inside told her that signature could tie her for life to his influence. "I'm sorry, Hernan. I'm not going to be part of your legal games," responded Sofia, rejecting the offer. The tension increased. Esteban, seeing that his attempts to intimidate Sofia weren't working, took another step closer. "You're right about something, Sofia. Not everything in life is resolved with the law, but I still have my methods." With an imperceptible gesture, Esteban made some of his men draw even closer. Sofia noticed the change in the atmosphere. The threat was no longer just verbal. Esteban was willing to resort to force. "Wait," said Sofia with a voice that had a mixture of calm and determination. "What you're doing is an abuse of power. I'm not going to allow that to happen. Whether by law or by my own valor, I'm going to fight for what is just." At that moment, the figure of Tomas appeared from the shadows. The young man had been observing from the beginning, and although he didn't have the resources or power of Esteban, his loyalty and courage were unquestionable. "Sofia is right, Esteban," he said with a firm voice. "You can try to intimidate us, but you won't get what you want this way. This isn't your territory, and if you decide to do something, I assure you, you'll face more than you expect." Esteban, surprised by Tomas's presence, frowned but didn't react immediately. The young man was nothing more than a peasant without power, without money, but his determination seemed invincible, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, there was something that couldn't be bought, the will of a humble people. "This isn't a threat, Esteban," continued Tomas. "It's a warning. If you continue, there will be consequences. Sofia isn't alone, and you won't destroy what we've built with your power games." For a moment, Esteban seemed to doubt. He knew that if he opted for violence, it could be a much greater problem than he was willing to handle. Despite his wealth, his influence didn't reach everywhere. There were limits to what he could do without attracting others' attention. However, the arrogance that defined him didn't allow him to back down completely. "Enough," ordered Esteban with a hard voice, looking at his men. "This matter is taking a turn I didn't expect. But let it be clear, Sofia, that the next time you interfere with my plans, there won't be warnings. This isn't a fight you can win." Sofia looked at him without flinching, her heart racing but with an unbreakable inner strength. "The fight for Aurora has only just begun, Esteban. Don't be mistaken. Aurora is more than property to me. She's a life I've saved, and I'm not going to let you destroy her for your ego." With those words, Esteban, knowing he couldn't win today's battle, signaled his men to withdraw. Although Sofia's face showed determination, she knew this victory was only temporary. Esteban Valverde wouldn't easily surrender, but at that moment, Sofia felt she had taken a crucial step to protect Aurora. The confrontation wasn't over. Esteban, with his wounded pride, had made it clear he wouldn't stop fighting for what he believed belonged to him, but Sofia had also demonstrated she wasn't willing to yield, regardless of the cost. The air at the ranch had calmed after Esteban Valverde and his men's departure, but the tension lingered in the atmosphere like a shadow that wouldn't disappear. Sofia remained in the same place where she had defied Esteban, her chest still heaving from the adrenaline, but showing no sign of weakness. Tomas stood at her side, still concerned but hopeful that the worst had passed. "You did well, Sofia," said Tomas, looking toward the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in warm tones. "But it won't be that easy. Esteban won't let this go." Sofia nodded, looking at the place where Esteban's entourage had disappeared. Aurora, who had been observing everything from a distance, approached her majestic body to Sofia as if wanting to give her strength. "I know, Tomas, but I can't turn back. Aurora isn't just a horse. She's a life I've cared for and defended. And though Esteban thinks he can resolve everything with power and money, I won't allow it." Tomas observed her, impressed by the young woman's determination. He knew that although Esteban was a powerful man, Sofia had something he could never buy: the courage to fight for what was right. But Esteban's words still echoed in his mind, and the doubt about what would happen in the future continued to torment him. "What will we do now? We can't stay here waiting for him to return. We need a plan." Sofia sighed deeply and looked at Aurora. It had been a long day, but she knew there was still much to do. Esteban Valverde wouldn't surrender, and if there was one thing she had learned over the years, it was that the threats of powerful men didn't easily dissolve. "The first thing is that we need to make sure Aurora is safe. I have to take her to a secure place where Esteban can't find her so easily," said Sofia with a firm voice. "And after that, we need to gather allies. We can't confront Esteban alone." Tomas frowned. "Allies? Who could help us?" Sofia smiled, though the smile was laden with a sadness she couldn't hide. "There are more people willing to fight for what's just than it seems. Esteban has his money, but we have something he doesn't have: the support of those who know what it's like to lose. Those who, like me, believe that money isn't everything." With determination, she decided it was time to take the next step. She knew Esteban Valverde would take advantage of any weakness, and although she didn't have the resources of a rich man, she did have something much more valuable: the truth of her cause. Throughout the night, Sofia and Tomas prepared for what could be the final battle. They sought those who could be their allies: farmers, friends, and even people who, like her, understood the value of what truly mattered. It was time to show Esteban Valverde that Aurora wasn't alone and that Sofia's cause was stronger than any threat. When morning arrived, Esteban Valverde returned to the ranch, confident that Sofia would yield to his power. He didn't expect that upon crossing the ranch's gate, he would find something completely different. A multitude of people who, like Sofia, weren't willing to allow such a selfish man to destroy what had cost so much to build. "Sofia," said Esteban with a mocking smile as he observed the number of people who had gathered, "you thought you could defy me with these people? They're just peasants. They don't know what it's like to fight against someone like me." Sofia approached with firmness, looking Esteban in the eyes. "I may not know how to play your games, Esteban, but I know what it's like to fight for what's right. And I won't yield. Aurora is safe here, and I won't let you take her." Esteban's face darkened. "We'll see, Sofia. I thought I could be reasonable, but now I see you're just stubborn. Do you think you can win? This isn't just a confrontation between you and me. It's a war that involves everyone." Sofia looked at him without fear. "It is a war, Esteban. Yes, but it doesn't just involve everyone. It involves those who fight for justice, for life. And as long as you keep believing that money can buy everything, I assure you, you're going to lose. And this time, I'm not going to surrender." A heavy silence fell over all those present. Esteban's men, who before showed confidence, began to waver upon seeing the unity of the villagers. Although Esteban was powerful, at that moment, Sofia and her community represented something he couldn't control: the collective determination of a people rising up for what they considered just. "You've made a mistake, Esteban," said Sofia with a firm and clear voice. "Because although you believe money and power are everything, there's something you can't buy: respect, justice, and the fight for what's right." With those words, Esteban Valverde understood that the battle was lost. The gaze of those present, the strength of the community, and Sofia's determination had defeated him. Although he retreated, his face reflected a mixture of rage and frustration, knowing that for the first time, someone had managed to beat him at his own game. Aurora, the horse that had been the cause of everything, remained at the ranch where she was finally free from Esteban Valverde's clutches. Sofia had won, but not only because of her bravery, but because of the strength of the community that had united in the fight for what was right. The confrontation had ended, but the message was clear: money and power aren't everything, and there will always be those who fight for justice. As Sofia stood watching Esteban and his men ride away, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. It had been a hard-fought victory, but she knew it might not be the end. Men like Esteban Valverde didn't surrender easily. They retreated, regrouped, and attacked again when least expected. "Do you think he'll come back?" Tomas asked, coming to stand beside her. "Maybe," Sofia replied, turning to face the gathered villagers who had stood with her. "But if he does, we'll be ready, together." The crowd nodded in agreement, their faces showing determination and solidarity. One by one, they approached Sofia, offering words of support and promises to help however they could. Many had brought food, some offered to take turns watching over the ranch, and others volunteered their skills: a carpenter to reinforce the stable, a seamstress to make warm blankets for Aurora, a former guard to teach Sofia and Tomas some self-defense techniques. This unexpected show of community support brought tears to Sofia's eyes. All her life, she had struggled alone, facing challenges with only her own strength and determination. Now, looking at the circle of supporters around her, she realized she was no longer alone. Her fight for Aurora had awakened something in the village, a sense of collective purpose, a reminder that together they could stand against injustice, even when it came in the form of a powerful man like Esteban Valverde. As the day wore on, The crowd gradually dispersed, each person returning to their daily responsibilities, but with a new sense of connection. Sophia led Aurora back to the stable, murmuring soft words of reassurance to the mare, whose pregnancy was becoming more visible with each passing day. "We did it, girl," she whispered, stroking Aurora's neck. "They came for you, but they couldn't take you. You're safe now." She placed a hand on the mare's swollen belly. "Both of you are safe." The days following the confrontation brought a new rhythm to Sophia's ranch. The small property that had once been a quiet refuge was now a center of activity, as villagers came and went, bringing supplies, offering help, and checking on Aurora. What had begun as Sophia's personal battle had transformed into a symbol of resistance for the entire community, a reminder that even the most powerful could be challenged when people stood together. Sophia embraced this change with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. Each morning, as she tended to Aurora, whose pregnancy was progressing steadily, she marveled at how one injured horse had changed not only her life but the spirit of the whole village. "Look at what you've done," she whispered to Aurora one morning while brushing her coat, which now gleamed with health. "You've brought us all together." The mare responded with a gentle nudge, her intelligent eyes seeming to understand the significance of what had transpired. Her belly had grown more prominent, and Sophia had begun preparing a special area in the stable for the eventual birth. With the help of Doña Clara's nephew, who indeed worked with horses in the capital, Sophia had learned what to expect and how to care for Aurora during this crucial time. Meanwhile, in his lavish mansion, Esteban Valverde paced the floor of his study, anger simmering beneath his composed exterior. The defeat at Sophia's ranch had left a bitter taste in his mouth, one that expensive whiskey couldn't wash away. For the first time in decades, someone had successfully defied him, and what was worse, that someone was a young woman of no social standing or political connections. "This isn't over," he muttered, stopping to stare at the collection of trophies that Aurora had won for him. "I don't lose, ever." Hernan stood quietly by the door, knowing better than to interrupt his employer's brooding. He had served Esteban long enough to recognize when the man was formulating a plan, and experience had taught him that Esteban's plans often involved tactics that existed in the gray areas of legality and morality. "Sir," Hernan finally ventured, "perhaps it's time to let this go. The mare is with child, yes, but you have other horses. Emperador could sire another foal just as promising." Esteban turned slowly, fixing Hernan with a cold stare. "This isn't about the horse anymore, Hernan. It's about principle. No one defies me and gets away with it. No one." He walked to his desk and pulled out a file, tossing it toward Hernan. "I want everything there is to know about Sofia Martinez. Her debts, her weaknesses, her friends. Everything. There's more than one way to win a war." Back at the ranch, Sophia remained unaware of Esteban's plotting. For her, each day without interference from him was a victory to be celebrated. She focused her energy on Aurora's care and on strengthening the bonds that had formed with her neighbors. What had once been a solitary existence had blossomed into a life rich with connection. One afternoon, as Sophia was adjusting Aurora's diet based on the advice of the veterinarian who now visited regularly, a luxury she could afford thanks to the collective contributions of the villagers, Tomas arrived with news that sent a chill through her heart. "Esteban's men have been asking questions in the village," he said without preamble. "They're looking into your family history, your finances, even the legal status of this land." Sophia's hand stilled on Aurora's flank. "What does he hope to find? I have nothing to hide." "It's not about finding something real, Sophia. Men like Esteban can create problems where none exist. If he can't take Aurora by force, he'll try to use the law, or what he can twist of it." Sophia's jaw tightened. She had hoped the confrontation had ended Esteban's pursuit, but deep down she had known better. Men with wounded pride rarely surrendered so easily. "Then we'll be ready," she said, resuming her care of Aurora with determined movements. "He found us prepared before, and he will again." Tomas nodded, admiring her resolve. "The village stands with you. We've already consulted with a lawyer in the city, a real one, not whoever that was who claimed to represent you to Esteban. He says your case is strong, especially since Esteban essentially abandoned Aurora. There are animal welfare laws that could work in our favor." The mention of the mysterious lawyer brought a frown to Sofia's face. "I never sent anyone to speak with Esteban. Who would have done that?" "No one knows," Tomas replied with a shrug. "But whoever it was, they stirred the pot. Esteban mentioned it during the confrontation. He seemed to think you had legal representation." This revelation added another layer of mystery to the situation. Who would have approached Esteban on her behalf? And why? These questions lingered in Sofia's mind as she continued her daily routines, but they were soon overshadowed by more immediate concerns. Aurora's pregnancy was advancing, and with it came new challenges. The mare's appetite had increased, and Sofia found herself struggling to provide enough food of the right quality. The village helped where they could, but resources were limited for everyone. One evening, as Sofia sat outside the stable watching the sunset, she heard the approach of a vehicle, an unusual sound in this remote area. Instantly alert, she stood, ready to defend Aurora if necessary. But instead of Esteban or his men, a middle-aged woman emerged from a modest car dressed in simple but elegant clothes. "Are you Sofia Martinez?" the woman asked, her voice carrying a gentle authority. "I am," Sofia replied cautiously. "Who's asking?" The woman smiled, the expression softening her serious features. "My name is Elena Valverde. I believe you've had some trouble with my brother Esteban." Sofia stared in shock. Esteban's sister? She hadn't even known he had one. The woman before her bore a subtle resemblance to Esteban. The same proud bearing, the same sharp eyes, but there was a warmth in her gaze that her brother lacked. Yes, Sofia stammered, recovering from her surprise. "He wants to take Aurora, but I won't let him." Elena nodded, her expression understanding. "May I see her? The mare, I mean." Hesitantly, Sofia led Elena to the stable where Aurora was resting. Upon seeing the visitor, the mare raised her head, ears pricked forward with interest rather than fear. Elena approached slowly, murmuring soft words, and to Sofia's amazement, Aurora allowed the woman to stroke her neck without hesitation. "She knows you," Sofia observed, watching the interaction with curiosity. "She should," Elena replied, a note of sadness entering her voice. "I was the one who raised her from a foal, before Esteban decided she would make him more money as a racehorse than as a companion." Sofia's eyes widened. "You were the one who sent the lawyer?" Elena turned to face her, a small smile playing at her lips. "Esteban isn't the only Valverde with resources, my dear, just the only one who flaunts them." She returned her attention to Aurora, her hand gently exploring the mare's swollen belly. "I've been watching from a distance, seeing how you care for her. When I heard what my brother had done, abandoning her when she was injured, then trying to reclaim her when he learned of the foal, I knew I had to intervene, but I needed to see for myself that she was in good hands." Sofia stood in stunned silence, trying to process this unexpected development. "So, what happens now?" she finally asked. Elena's gaze lingered on Aurora for a moment longer before she turned to address Sofia's question. "What happens now depends largely on you, my dear, and on how far you're willing to go to protect her." She gestured toward a nearby bench. "May we sit? There's much to explain." As they settled on the weathered wooden bench outside the stable, Elena began to unfold a story that cast new light on everything Sophia thought she knew about Aurora and the Valverde family. "My brother and I inherited our father's estate together," Elena began. "Our father was a hard man but fair in his own way. He believed in balance, power tempered with responsibility. Esteban only inherited the first part of that lesson." She sighed, looking toward the horizon where the sun was setting in a blaze of orange and gold. "After our father died, Esteban and I disagreed on many things, especially the treatment of the animals. Aurora was born on our estate, the daughter of my favorite mare. I raised her myself, bottle-fed her when her mother developed complications. But Esteban saw her potential as a racehorse, and with his controlling interest in the estate, I couldn't stop him from putting her into training." "You just let him take her?" Sophia couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. Elena's eyes flashed with a momentary pain. "I fought him in my way, but Esteban has always been relentless when he wants something. We reached a compromise. He would have Aurora for racing, but with the agreement that she would retire to my care after her racing days were done. When she was injured, I expected him to honor our arrangement." She shook her head, disappointment etched on her face. "Instead, I learned he had disposed of her. By the time I discovered what he'd done, she was gone. My sources told me she had been abandoned near a stream, and I've been searching ever since. When I heard rumors of a young woman who had rescued a fine chestnut mare, I had to investigate." Sophia listened, trying to reconcile this new information with everything that had happened. "So you sent a lawyer to Esteban pretending to represent me?" Elena smiled, a hint of mischief in her expression. "I thought it might complicate things for him. Force him to consider a legal approach rather than simply taking her by force. I needed time to find you myself." She reached into her handbag and withdrew a folder. "These are Aurora's original papers, her lineage, her medical history, and a legally binding document signed by both Esteban and myself regarding her care and ownership." Sophia took the folder with trembling hands, opening it to find documents filled with legal terminology she didn't fully understand. "What does this mean for Aurora?" "It means," Elena said carefully, "that according to our agreement, Aurora should have come to me after her injury. Esteban breached that contract when he abandoned her. And now, I'd like to formally transfer her ownership to you." Sophia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "To me? But why?" Elena's expression softened as she looked toward the stable where Aurora was resting. "Because in the short time you've had her, you've shown more genuine care for her than my brother has in all the years he owned her, and because—" She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Because sometimes doing what's right means recognizing who truly belongs with whom. Aurora has chosen you just as clearly as you've chosen her." Before Sophia could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles broke the evening calm. Multiple engines moving fast, too fast for the rough country road leading to her ranch. Elena's expression hardened as she rose to her feet. "That would be my brother," she said grimly, "earlier than I expected." Sophia stood as well, her heart pounding. Despite all they had been through, despite the community's support, Esteban still had the power to frighten her. But now, with Elena at her side and the documents in her hand, she felt a new strength. "What do we do?" she asked, clutching the folder to her chest. Elena's posture straightened, and in that moment, Sophia could see the family resemblance to Esteban. The same regal bearing, the same steely determination, but directed toward protection rather than possession. "We stand our ground," Elena replied simply, "together." As the vehicles pulled up in a cloud of dust, Sophia was relieved to see that they weren't alone. Word had spread quickly through the village network of Esteban's approach, and already people were arriving, some on foot, some on horseback, some in battered old trucks, to stand with Sofia once more. Tomas was among the first, positioning himself at Sofia's side with a nod of acknowledgement to Elena. Esteban emerged from his luxury SUV, his face darkening when he caught sight of his sister. "Elena," he said, his voice cold. "I should have known you'd involve yourself in this mess." "Hello, brother," Elena replied calmly. "I'm surprised it took you this long to track me down." Esteban's gaze shifted between Elena and Sofia, calculation evident in his eyes. "So this is your game? Turning a simple matter of property recovery into some kind of crusade?" "There's nothing simple about abandoning an injured animal who trusted you," Elena countered, "especially one who was never fully yours to begin with." Sofia stepped forward, the folder clutched in her hand like a shield. "Mr. Valverde, your sister has explained everything. According to your own agreement, Aurora should have gone to Elena after her injury. You broke that contract when you had your men abandon her." Esteban's expression tightened. "My arrangement with my sister is a private family matter and has no bearing on—" "It has every bearing," Elena interrupted, taking the folder from Sofia and extracting a document. "This contract, signed by both of us and witnessed by Father's lawyer, clearly stipulates that Aurora would come under my care if she could no longer race. You violated that agreement, and in doing so, forfeited any claim to her." The gathered villagers murmured among themselves, watching the confrontation with avid interest. Esteban's men shifted uncomfortably, caught between loyalty to their employer and the growing realization that they were outnumbered and possibly on the wrong side of the law. Esteban's face flushed with anger. "And now you think you can simply give her away? To this—" he gestured dismissively at Sofia. "This nobody." Sofia flinched at the insult, but Elena remained unruffled. "Sofia Martinez is hardly a nobody, Esteban. She's the woman who did what you couldn't. She saw Aurora's true value beyond her ability to win races or produce foals. She gave her care when you saw only a burden." She stepped closer to her brother, lowering her voice. "And if you persist in this, I'll be forced to make public exactly how you treat animals that no longer serve your purposes. I wonder how your business partners would react to that, your social circle, the racing commission." Esteban stared at his sister, jaw working as he calculated his options. The silence stretched, taut with tension, as everyone waited for his response. Finally, his shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly. "Keep the damn horse," he muttered, turning back toward his vehicle. "She's not worth the trouble." But before he could retreat completely, Sofia called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Her name is Aurora," she said clearly, "and she was always worth it." Esteban paused, his back to them, then continued to his car without another word. His men followed, casting uncertain glances back at the assembled villagers who stood their ground until the last vehicle had disappeared down the road. As the dust settled, Sofia turned to Elena, questions tumbling from her lips. "Is it over? Will he come back? What happens now?" Elena smiled, placing a reassuring hand on Sofia's shoulder. "Esteban doesn't easily admit defeat, but he's also pragmatic. He knows when a battle will cost more than the prize is worth, especially now that he faces opposition not just from you, but from me and this entire community." The villagers who had gathered began to disperse, their faces bright with the satisfaction of victory. Tomas approached, grinning widely. "I think this calls for a celebration," he announced. "A proper fiesta to honor Sofia, Aurora, and our new friend Elena." A cheer went up from the remaining villagers, and plans for a gathering began to take shape immediately. Sofia watched in amazement as her quiet life transformed, yet again. from solitude to struggle to celebration, all because of one injured mare who had stumbled into her life. "Thank you," she said to Elena as they walked back toward the stable to check on Aurora. "Not just for the documents, but for standing with me against your own brother. That couldn't have been easy." Elena's expression turned wistful. "Esteban and I have been at odds for years. Our father left us equal shares in the estate, but different visions of how to manage it. I've watched my brother's pursuit of wealth and status erode the values our father tried to instill in us." She paused at the stable door, looking in at Aurora, who nickered softly in greeting. "Sometimes family is defined more by shared values than by shared blood." As they entered the stable, Aurora approached them both, her movement now distinctly careful due to her advanced pregnancy. Elena ran a practiced hand along the mare's flank, then down to her swollen belly. "She'll deliver soon," Elena observed. "Within a week, I'd say. Are you prepared?" Sophia hesitated. "I've helped with farm animals before, but never a horse. The veterinarian has been teaching me what to expect, but—" "I'll stay," Elena said decisively, "if you'll have me. I've assisted with many foalings, including Aurora's own birth, and afterward—" She trailed off, suddenly uncertain. "Afterward?" Sophia prompted. Elena turned to face her directly. "I have a proposition for you, Sophia. One I hope you'll consider carefully. Over the next few days, as the village prepared for its celebration, Elena and Sophia spent long hours in conversation. They sat by Aurora's stall, walked the perimeter of Sophia's modest land, and shared meals at Sophia's small kitchen table. Elena spoke of her dreams for the family estate, the part that was rightfully hers, and of the sanctuary for retired racehorses she had been developing in secret, away from Esteban's disapproving eyes. "What I lack," Elena admitted one evening as they watched the sunset from Sophia's porch, "is someone who shares my vision, someone with the genuine care and determination that you've shown with Aurora." Sophia looked at her in surprise. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership," Elena corrected. "Your experience with Aurora has shown me something I've always believed, that sometimes the people with the greatest gifts for healing and nurturing animals are found in the most unexpected places. My sanctuary needs your heart, Sophia, and in return, I can offer resources, protection, and the chance to help many more animals like Aurora." Before Sophia could respond, a soft nickering from the stable caught their attention. Both women hurried inside to find Aurora pacing restlessly, her sides heaving with early contractions. "It's time," Elena said, her voice calm but urgent. "The foal is coming." What followed was a long night of anxious waiting, gentle encouragement, and careful assistance. Elena's experience proved invaluable as she guided Sophia through the process, teaching her the signs to watch for and when to intervene. The village veterinarian arrived midway through, but largely observed, impressed by the competent care Aurora was receiving. As dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Aurora delivered a healthy chestnut colt with a perfect white star on his forehead. Sophia watched in wonder as the newborn struggled to stand on wobbly legs, his mother nickering encouragement. "He's beautiful," Sophia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Perfect." Elena smiled, equally moved by the sight. "What will you name him?" Sophia considered for a moment, watching as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the stable window, illuminating the foal's bright coat. "Amenaker," she decided. "It means dawn," Elena finished for her. "A new beginning." "It's perfect." News of Amenaker's birth spread quickly through the village, and by midday, well-wishers were arriving with gifts for both mother and foal. The celebration that had been planned took on new significance. Not just a victory party, but a welcoming ceremony for the newest member of their community. As Sophia watched the villagers gather in her small yard, sharing food and music and joy, she felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. These people who had stood with her against Esteban had become more than neighbors. They were family. Elena approached, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. "Have you thought about my offer?" she asked, handing one to Sophia. Sophia nodded, her eyes drifting to the stable where Aurora and a manicure were resting. "I have, and I'm grateful, truly. But this is your home," Elena finished for her, understanding in her eyes. "Yes, these people, this land, they stood by me when I needed them most. I can't leave them now." Sophia took a deep breath. "But that doesn't mean we can't work together. There's land adjoining mine that's been abandoned for years. With your resources and my connections in the community, we could establish a sanctuary right here, a place where animals like Aurora can heal and where people can learn to care for them properly." Elena's eyes lit up with interest. "A local extension of what I've been building? It could work. We could create something meaningful together, something that honors what Aurora has taught us both." As the sun began to set on that day of new beginnings, Sophia and Elena stood together, watching as villagers took turns peeking into the stable to admire Aurora and her foal. The mare, who had once been valued only for her speed and breeding potential, now represented something far more important: the power of compassion to transform lives. Years passed, and the small sanctuary that began on Sophia's land grew to become a beloved institution in the region. Aurora and a manicure became its heart, symbols of resilience and hope for every injured or abandoned animal that found refuge there. Children from surrounding villages came to learn about animal care, and former racehorses lived out their days in peace under the watchful eye of Sophia and her growing team. Elena visited regularly, bringing resources, expertise, and occasionally a new animal in need. The partnership between the wealthy benefactor and the village caretaker became legendary, a testimony to what could be accomplished when compassion bridged social divides. As for Esteban, he eventually sold his racing interests, perhaps influenced more by his sister's example than he would ever admit. While he never publicly acknowledged his past mistakes, he quietly donated to the sanctuary each year on Amanicer's birthday. One warm spring evening, as Sophia sat on her porch watching Aurora and her now-grown son grazing peacefully in the meadow, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. What had begun with one act of kindness toward an abandoned mare had rippled outward, changing not just her own life but countless others. "I promise to take care of you," she whispered to Aurora, who lifted her head as if hearing the words carried on the breeze. "I never imagined how much you would give me in return."